So, was ist da los? Haut die Sounds raus. Real Talk, ich bin so faul, das lade ich einfach ungeschnitten hoch.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Fraser Strachan. I'm the lead audio designer on Forza Horizon 5, and I lead the whole audio team on all the different various bits
Hier, der ist für unser Sound verantwortlich.
But everything you hear in the game essentially goes through me.
Wahrscheinlich reden jetzt über die Geräusche, die die Schafe machen oder so, nicht über die Autos.
Let's take a quick look at the schedule for today.
Car Audio Design.
Mike and Fraser will walk us through how they captured car audio for Forza Horizon 5 and then integrated those sounds into the game. They'll then debut new audible upgrades in the game and we'll go through the audio improvements on the
Community
Xbox
Question
Series
and
X
Answers.
consoles.
Da kommen schon wieder so loste Fragen. Jetzt läuft nur the Forza Horizon Logo.
Especially around today's audio theme, put those in chat and we'll answer a few at the end of the stream. So, Mike, we're going to go over to you first before we deep dive into the nerdery, and I specifically want to know what's so exciting about the car sounds we're going to be talking about today in Forza Horizon 5.
Yeah, so in Forza Horizon 5 we have the largest car list we've ever launched with, hundreds of cars, and I am just super excited about the fact that each one of them sounds unique, it sounds different, it sounds authentic.
Was?
Now, yeah, I was going to say, you did mention mere seconds ago that every sound has to go through you, so let's unpack that, I think. What does that mean?
Sure, yeah. I mean, so I actually worked really closely with Mike, sort of figuring out what Mike's creative vision is for the game and trying to translate that into an amazing soundscape for our games. And I think both of us were super excited to choose somewhere like Mexico, which has such a strong audible palette to it. Like, as soon as you say Mexico, you know what the soundscape sounds like. You know what the ambience is, the music, the car culture. It just comes with all of that bundled into it, and we were so excited to get into that. But Mike and I worked really closely on.
Der meinte, von jeder Wagen kriegt seinen eigenen dynamischen Sound. Glaube ich nicht dran, irgendwie.
Yeah, that's right. So myself and Fraser, along with Dave Orton, a regular on these streams, if you're a regular viewer, we're responsible for collating that soundtrack and bringing all of the artists on board and getting those soundtracks together. We're not actually going to talk in any more depth about the soundtrack on this show. We'll pick up on a later show. Yeah. So this is all about car audio today.
And that's a perfect segue, because I want to know the most important question is, how do you make the sound for so many cars in a car game?
Well, I mean, you can't have this many cars without having loads of good car recordings.
Absolutely.
You need to have really good source. And one thing I'm really excited to share with everyone is that we've actually been out and we've recorded and added over 320 brand new car recordings to our existing library, which means that we've got an absolutely phenomenal amount of source to make the cars sound as best as they possibly can.
Die haben über 320 neue Sounds aufgenommen.
Sound legit.
And to prove that, we actually have something we can watch now. We're going to unpack a little bit about how you recorded these, because it looks incredible. So we're going to be showing this in the background. Unfortunately, we're going to be...
Lol, den BMW gibt's jetzt auch?
So if you do want to watch a clean version, don't
nee, ich wollte gerade sagen, ist ja gar nicht das Spiel.
At a later time. But Fraser, what is it we're looking at?
Den gibt's nicht im Spiel, aber die nehmen die Sounds
aus. Some of the cars that we've been out and recording over the last few years. It really did take the last 2-3 years to really sort of build everything from the ground up. We needed that extra time to really look at how we revolutionize how we were doing the cars, because it just takes a long time with the old process that we have. So we've got brand new processes in place. And as I mentioned, it really starts with getting really clear source. So with this many cars, we need to get out and source a lot of cars, like finding
I mean, you
people.
lot don't have these just in your garage,
I wish.
just ready to
I really
record.
do wish.
I mean, do you know what? They did actually record a Mustang, and then I found out the day after that they'd been at a racetrack with a Mustang, and I was like, guys.
Natürlich nehmen die einen Furzen Golf auf, das kann ja
Maybe
wieder nichts werden.
Sound of your car.
Kapi.
No, yeah, no, it's true. We'll get your car out and record it as well.
Thank you.
It does take a long time to source all the different people with all these different vehicles and figure out, get them to send us videos of like what they sound like, because you know, every car, there's hundreds of variations of them, and they do vary in how they actually sound as well. So we want them to sound crisp and full of like all the frequencies that we want to try and record.
It's pretty incredible, right? The XJ220 is probably one of the rarest cars in the world, and it's just like calling somebody up and asking if we can borrow their car for a bit.
You just wax the microphones on it like it was no big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite car recordings that we've actually got in the game. It's such a rare engine, and it just translates so well into the game. And you sort of see that we're recording them out on an airstrip. We need that for various reasons, so that it's flat and you can record the car in a single gear going all the way up to the red line.
Consistent,
And
right?
all the way back down again. And you need that length as well, because if you're recording a hypercar, you maybe don't need it to be as long because it can.
Warum nehmen die nicht immer hier JDM-Cars und so vor allem?
Whereas if you're recording a truck like this or an old banger or vintage car, then you kind of need a stretch of land that goes all the way up to Scotland.
LKW.
So you do need the full length, and sometimes you even worry that you're going to go off the end. But fortunately, it's never happened. This was an interesting truck to record, actually, because you can see the engine's exposed at the back, and we have to do a lot of work to wrap muffling around the microphones to make sure that all of that wind that is traveling around the front of the vehicle and coming around the back you don't hear that in microphones, because it can sound really kind of distorted once you get up to top speed. Some of these cars can go really fast, including this truck. So we do take each car out.
Die Veko für den Benz, echt, ey. Hammer, ne?
Like, it comes with its own challenges. This one was different.
Einfach Iveco Truck nehmen für den Mercedes Truck Sound.
You know, these Lancias as well, which is cool. And we
Lancia.
minimum probably go out with round about 8 microphones for each car, but sometimes we'll attach more if they've got really good transmission sounds, or you know, if it's a hybrid car, we might make sure we're recording the electric
Die
winds
nehmen so
on them as
merkwürdige
well.
Autos auf. Irgendwie habe ich ein
So
schlechtes
it's a bit
Gefühl.
like a drum kit. You attach like multiple different microphones, and then once you get back to the studio, you can have a listen and see which ones sound the best at the different positions on the microphone and mix them all together. And this was really fun car to get out on the track. Really raspy, really kind of like quite violent, actually.
Yeah, I can't believe you guys got a Stratos. That is, I like one that looks to be.
Ich will mal
museum
Ingame-Sound hören,
quality.
Leute. Macht bloß keinen
The whole
Scheiß
thing
hier.
just looks like a car nerd's dream. Was there any that was quite? I mean, you mentioned the Jag getting out there and filming. That was pretty amazing. Were there any other highlights from this long session you were doing?
Absolutely. I mean, I think my favorite is the Morgan three-wheeler, purely because it's such a unique car. Like it's basically, you know, it's a V2.
Hey, dein Ernst jetzt? Hammer, der Typ.
Tell them what to do and hope that it sounds good when it comes back. But yeah, there's some really
Erstmal
cool
10
cars.
Minuten
And
Stilltreppe dafür.
a lot of these people that bring their cars along, they'll be Forza fans themselves, so they'll
Der war lost jetzt in
excited
dem Moment
to
hier.
hear them in the game. So I'm sure they'll all be glad to see these
If you need to
featured
do
here.
any pickups with a Corsa, do let me know. I
Alright.
can be available at a moment's notice.
Noted, Mustang, Corsa.
There you go.
Das ist
Sorted.
völlig normal.
Well, there is the
Ihr seid voll scheiß
This
Teufel,
was
Kinder.
brilliant. And you could hear this, the same volume.
Als
than
Hupe,
any
Gang,
of the
Gang,
ones
Gang,
that
Bang,
was right
LetsPlayOnkel
next to
Gang.
it. So it was just an absolute beast. It was so raspy, it's incredible.
It sounds like a World War II plane, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's cool. So we got this, and then
Die
you'll see
aufnehmen, ne?
coming
Das ist
up
ein
in a minute, we
Wahnsinn.
also went out and recorded multiple different types of Supras. So the Supra was an interesting one that we added to Forza Horizon 4. There was a lot of conversation around the sound of it. Does it sound stock?
Once you
Like,
finish
is
the
that an
payments,
upgraded
you
one?
will see
And
my
honestly, we
Son,
kind of never
don't
really
be a
had
trash
that
man that
concept.
makes
Boah, ey. Jetzt wo ein Supra kommt, seid ihr eigentlich bescheuert, ey?
One thing we really need to do is try and get all the Supras.
Unbelievable.
This is the stock one that you can see.
I do not wish to be horny anymore.
Absolutely terrific.
Ich will doch nur die Sounds
I
hören.
just want to
Got
be
bad
happy.
sounds on it. But then we
Son.
actually got another
Krasser Supra-Sound, ja, muss ich schon sagen, ey.
just battled it out, and you'll see coming up in a second.
Nico, du bist nur für
they
10
both
Minuten
were
getimeoutet,
revving next
keine
to one
Angst.
another, and it really paints the picture of what it sounds like to upgrade your car from stock up to something
Aber
else.
schon mal gut zu sehen,
The
dass
thing I like about
Supras
the
aufgenommen
upgrade
werden.
Supras, there it is.
There they are.
Weil der
head to
aktuelle
head.
Supra-Sound ist ja
Let's go.
Müll.
Wow, listen to that. That would blow your head off.
Absolutely
That sounds
spitting fire
incredible.
there.
Yeah, we actually lost a few microphones to these.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a microphone cemetery.
Ist nicht
somewhere
sonderlich
in
laut,
PG.
aber man konnte was hören. Ist schon geil.
This one sounded incredible when it passed by.
Die haben ein paar Mikros geschrottet mit dem Supra. Ja, nicht schlecht.
Sounds
Yeah,
as it goes
that
past.
noise exactly.
Yeah, and like all that.
hoffentlich
all
hört
those
er sich auch
sounds
so
that we
geil
record
an.
in these cars across the,
Aber ey, das ist die Bestätigung,
320
ne?
plus, we've managed to,
Obwohl, gut, kann auch
curate
sein, dass die
them
einen Supra-Sound für andere
and
Autos
really make
benutzen.
a
Heißt noch nicht, dass
massive
Supra wieder
library
dabei
of
ist.
source out of all that stuff as well.
So I suppose the big question in the room is, how does that turn into a game then? How do you take all the sounds you pick up from this track, these lovely folks who have these wonderful cars, and then how do we
Gammeldreier,
actually
ne?
hear them when we play them?
Well, it's something that
Ja, die
Mike
neue
and the
Supra
dev
ist
team
dabei,
kind
ja,
of
aber denken,
they're
die alte
quite
ist wahrscheinlich. Hat die zugenommen
jealous
in den
when they see us
2
bring
Wochen?
these cars back to the studio.
Yeah, so we're giving you this presentation now. Fraser does this maybe 10 times throughout development, where he's like,
Ja, der
hey,
wird sich
everybody,
klar
here's a video
anders
of us out on
anhören
the
als
track
im
with a
Real
load of
Life ein
cars.
bisschen, ne? Aber
And
ich
then-
hoffe, es
My
kommt so
job's
nah wie
great.
möglich ran.
Yeah.
Well, then we get the job of going and like playing them in game and seeing what they feel like,
This
and
is
then,
true, this is
and then
true.
Das wäre
providing
schon
feedback,
nice.
which
Also,
is
wenn
usually
sie jetzt schon
online.
extra so
Sounds
Dinger
amazing.
aufgenommen
Yeah.
haben.
I
Oh.
mean, I guess to get a little bit more technical.
Der hat ja am Anfang erzählt, 320 neue Sounds haben die
We were
aufgenommen.
developing our granular hybrid looping technology, which is something we've been working on for a long time. But it's
Ob die auch die Sounds von dem E-Auto aufgenommen haben?
In previous games, we were maybe using it on, I'd say, about
Die
10 to 15% of
Reifensounds.
the cars, such as in Horizon 4. We're using it on 100% of the cars now in Horizon 5, which is great. They all sound fantastic. For anyone who's not really sure exactly what granular synthesis
Ich habe das
is,
Mikro einfach im Kühlschrank gestellt, ey.
the old method was essentially a looping method, which would take a car and we'd put it in a garage on a dyno and get it to play back at, like, say, 1,000 RPM, 2,000 RPM, 3,000 RPM, and it was a computer that was doing
Einfach
that.
Mikro
So
an
it was a
die
fairly
Pläse 5
simulated
kleben. Ja,
environment.
moin.
We chop the loops out from those and then play them back. So there's a few things. They can sound a little
Hast
bit
du
like
auch
they're in a
Supra-Sound,
garage,
sagst du dann?
and not really out on track. And they can also kind of sound a little bit wrong when you don't get the engine rotations matching up correctly. So with our new granular synthesis techniques, we actually take the recordings that we get out on track, having driven up to the red line, back down again, we chop each of the individual engine rotations up into a tiny little sample, and we end up with thousands of little audio files
Wow.
that we can play back in the game. And the benefit of granular is that it runs at 90 frames per second, which it obviously clocks faster than our game actually
Interesting,
runs.
Okay.
And the cool thing about that is a lot of people will say the cars feel more responsive.
Moin,
It just-
Harry
it just
K.
feels like when you rev the controller, you're doing that in the game, and it feels far more like responsive, like you're in
Aufzug
control of
aufgenommen,
it.
mein Gott, ey.
And that's what you're seeing there when it's 90 frames per second. It's just far more reactive.
Gelbe Autos.
And I'm
Wo
super
bleiben die
excited
gelben
for
Autos?
everyone
Sind
to
da schon
get in and
welche?
have a listen.
Well, talking of have a listen, we do have an exclusive look and listen right now at some of these cars in action. So let's take a peek.
Da sind schon
And once
zwei.
again, we will be pausing to listen to some of these beauties, but we will be putting a clean
Ah,
version up
falsch.
later. So let's have a listen to this one first.
Ah,
This one's
ah!
a Supra tearing it through the living desert.
It is, yeah, that's the black Supra, I think, or one of the other ones that you saw.
Mach doch
on that
lauter.
car.
Now they've got a Lancia Stratos, one of my absolute favourite
War
cars.
schon
around the kit.
besser.
It's amazing. This car
Aber noch nicht
handles
geil
really
oder
nicely.
perfekt,
It's really
finde ich.
kind of bouncy along all the different terrains. Oh, here we go. Bit of deja vu here. And you really hear that rasp coming through
Absolutely,
that we
yeah.
heard out on track.
Yeah, we won't need to encourage you to do this, but people will already go and grab all these clips and lay them over top of each other and realise that
Geht, ne? Also auf jeden
Stratos
Fall
we had
besser
on
als
track
Supra
really
jetzt
does
in
sound
Horizon
exactly
4.
like the one.
That's what I'm going to be doing after the stream. Is going to be going back and seeing if I
Oder
can
zeigen
get
die
all the
wieder so
different sounds. and be
Komiker-Autos, ne?
Yes, you did do it. Well done.
This one I think translated really
Voll
well
viel
into the game.
Vegetation einfach, ne? Krass.
Yeah, Golf R there.
This one's lovely. Quite a lot of people around the studio have this car,
Yeah.
so
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of people who know exactly how it should
Resonate with this one,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's one of the things that, I mean, following last episode in which we were talking about the sky, and the sky being an actual image of the Mexican sky, and now knowing that these cars are the actual
Laber doch nicht!
recorded, it's What I'm trying to say is art is quite literally imitating life
Yeah.
in a game that is ridiculously fun to play, right?
We're trying to be as accurate and sort of, I guess, trying to portray real life as much as we possibly can, whilst making it fun for all the players to listen to. I love the sound of this GT.
The Huracan cover car
Der hört
from
sich gut an.
FH2.
Der klingt gut, ey. Ich kann ja am Freitag Aventador live fahren. Kann ich euch direkt einen Vergleich machen?
Oh goodness. When is it, November 9th? Is it now, please?
Ah, die
This
sind jetzt
one is
natürlich
interesting
ungetuned,
because
ne? Wie hören die sich
someone on the
getuned an,
dev
ist
team
die
actually
Frage.
has this in the car park, and every day he would come around and say, "Come and have a listen. Like, like make sure it sounds exactly like this."
Do some extra credit.
Yeah. These Ferraris sound really mean. And we got some really good Ferrari recordings in the game now.
Ah,
Of course, the Dodge Viper, which I think a lot of people will be happy to see this featured here.
ja, Mann. Ja, Mann, der war geil. Viper war auch top.
Just a little snippet. And something interesting to point out here is, I guess
sie die
when
Karte
you see this
ausblenden,
video
ja, ne?
after the stream, something to listen out for is all the different tyre sounds and all the different vehicles. We've now got different skid sounds based on the vehicle and the tyre size, so that if you're in a massive truck, you'll hear that, as well as, you know, skid tyres and drift tyres and stuff.
Should we play that?
Wow.
I'm waiting for us to finish talking.
This one, I love this area of the map because it features into something we'll probably talk about a little bit later on, where you can hear everything
Also,
slap
Supra
off
bin
of
ich
the
noch nicht
canyon walls.
100% glücklich.
Well, I mean, I feel
Aber
like I'd
schon
be
viel
remiss
besser.
if I didn't ask this.
Schon
It's something I know very fondly from the Forza
viel
community,
besser.
that they all love slapping on turbos and superchargers to their cars, and so I sort of have to ask on behalf of them if those have improved.
Ja,
as
was
well.
meint
They
ihr?
have, so I think
Wonderful.
all right, I'm off. Yeah, I mentioned that because we've been out
Also,
for-
ja, die Viper war auf jeden Fall sehr geil vom Sound. Der Huracan war ziemlich geil. Supra auch wesentlich besser als jetzt in Horizon 4.
As part of our
Ah,
improvements,
ja.
we've actually created a brand new modular
Mal
system,
abwarten, wie es am
which,
Ende dann
essentially,
klingt, ne? Bis jetzt war ja ganz
it sort of
gut, soweit.
intelligently takes all of our database information that we have. So it figures out, is it a V8, is it a muscle car, is it modern or is it vintage? And basically pulls from a library of different sources so that it attaches them onto the cars for you.
Okay.
Whereas before it was quite a static system. The other thing I'm really excited about is that all of that stuff I was telling you about, granular synthesis running at 90 frames per second, we've actually now got all the turbo winds,
Schlupfine ist
supercharger
enttäuscht.
winds, and all the transmission winds running through that same system. So all of that is super reactive.
Ich glaube, das war soundtechnisch, ne? Das war ja das Wichtigste am ganzen
Right up next
Stream.
to the car engines. And one of the cool things using this new modular system is that it actually allows us, when you're upgrading your car, to hear the different sounds of the turbos and superchargers as they're applied.
Oh, so folks will be able to experience that in real time when they come to upgrade their own vehicles.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow,
So yeah, so
okay.
you'll now, as you're upgrading your car, you'll be able to hear those upgrades taking effect. So when you change the exhaust, the intake, the camshaft, you'll be able to rev the engine and hear the difference that makes to the sound of your car.
I think we actually have a video showcasing some of that in action.
Any second.
Ah, there it is.
No, it's live. Yeah, so here you can see that we're in the player house in the normal upgrade flow, and you can go to your intake, and here, as you apply the different stock, street, race, and sport performance modes, you can hear that actually change the sound of your car. And don't worry, I've talked all over the top of it, but we will make this video available afterwards.
Yeah. A cool new feature as well, you can now rev your engine from inside the garage. So as you're trying
Oh,
out
I
these
like
different upgrades,
that.
you can rev the engine and see exactly what it sounds like.
I'm also a big fan of the graph. Just gonna say it. Love a graph. It sort of adds to how nerdy and.
Ey, die
wonderful
labern
it
die ganze
feels.
Zeit da drüber. Ich
So you
kotze
can
im
take your
Dreieck.
exhaust as well, depending on the upgrade paths per car. you'll be able to hear your exhaust note change. And it's important to point out that this doesn't actually it doesn't change the volume of the car, because then it would unsettle the mix. What it does is it actually changes the character of the car. So it sounds completely different, and it gives you that feeling of actually taking off a complete exhaust and replacing
Kannst du
it
jetzt
with
anhören, wie
an
sich die
entirely
Sounds von deinem
different
Auto verändern, wenn du
manufactured
Teile
part.
umbaust?
And then one thing, this is one of my favorite parts of the, we've been working with the physics team really, really closely to introduce drivetrain flex back into the game, which is really cool. And that sort of gives you that wobble on the cars, so that as you're taking off in lower gears, because it goes,
It's reacting to it,
and then you,
Guck mal, was da oben in der Ecke noch
it's
ist.
kind of which is really cool. But
Any
also
more sounds of what it does?
Honestly, Charlie,
Just
he does
you
this
wait.
all the time. It's just he's like that guy from Police Academy.
Unsufferable. And the other thing you would have seen there on the camshaft upgrades is a lot of people have picked up on the limiter behaviors in some of the cars. So as the car is bouncing off the limiter, if it's at a lower one, all the cars in Forza Horizon 4 used to have a set limiter behavior, so they would go like wow, 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 where they're up the top. Whereas as you upgrade it, you'll hear it kind of go wah, 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 when it's up the top. I knew
Do
you
you
were
do
gonna
this
laugh at
in
me.
meetings?
All
Weißt
the
du,
time.
Is this
all
how
the
you
time.
communicate
die
what you
machen,
want your
zeigen
Yeah.
ein Video mit Sounds und so weiter und labern die ganze Zeit drüber, du hörst kaum was.
It works. I completely understand what you mean, so it's effective.
So yeah, as you upgrade your car on your intake, your exhaust, you will have seen there that we had, as you go through all the different turbo layers, the supercharger layers, the centrifugal superchargers as well. You'll hear all those changing in real time as you rev, as well as when you apply the stock street race and sport modes for each of the different turbos. It'll go from being kind of like a to more of a.
I don't think we could do a show without these now. I want you to know that.
There you go. I'm just going to be wheeled
Just
on for the
pop
sound
on.
effects.
Here's the sound of the week.
Just as an aside, while we're looking at this, I think it's cool to note that if you're wondering why the car looks so realistic, why it sits in the scene so nicely, it's because you've got ray tracing active as well.
So actually, I mean, does ray tracing affect anything audio-wise as well as visual while we're here?
It does, yes. So we have taken ray tracing and we're using it throughout the world. So actually we're sending out ray traces to detect walls, buildings and
Ja,
ceilings as well.
ist schon interessant, dass man da jetzt reinhören kann, während man sein Auto umbaut. Viel
I
mitgekriegt
bet you
haben wir
can.
jetzt
I
nicht.
bet you
I
can.
think it's your turn.
I'm not doing it.
Aber,
Right.
na okay.
Yes, so I think bats use ray tracing as well, but yeah.
You just didn't want to do a
It's 'cause-
dolphin.
No, I was like,
Yeah,
bats
anyway,
don't make any
ray
sense.
tracing. Go on, go on, Fred.
Yeah, so ray tracing, we're using ray tracing to detect walls, ceilings, buildings, which means that you'll hear your car bouncing off of all the buildings around you, and that'll change with the environment. It's really cool. As soon as we turned it on, it just it grounded you in reality. It made the world feel really alive. So when you're driving through Guanajuato, for instance, it basically, you can hear it slapping off of all the buildings. And I mentioned there as well that we're detecting ceilings, so things like tunnels, for instance. If you're listening with spatial audio, something like Dolby Atmos with your headphones on, you'll actually be able to hear your car bouncing off of the roofs as well,
Wow.
which is really cool.
What I love is that when you're in the city and it's like a really hard surface, you get that kind of crisp echo. Whereas when you're in the rainforest in the jungle, it's still bouncing back off of all the trees and foliage, but it's much more muffled, it's much more organic feel to it, but still
Totally.
really effective.
Every material in the game has been set up with a different absorption coefficient, which is kind of an acoustic term, which essentially says if it's concrete, then it'll bounce off more sound than it would if it's foliage or something like that, which actually absorbs the sound. So it's really dynamic to the world around you. Something we were chatting about before as well is occlusion that we're using ray tracing for as well, which means that as you play something like a multiplayer mode, we're actually detecting the where every single car is in relation to your car, and we're muffling the sound of the cars to make sure that if a car is behind a building, for instance, not to head straight towards the car, but to maybe head up the alleyway and try and cut them off as they come around the corner.
Sneaky.
I
I
should
use
add
hiding to win, so that's not fair that that's been...
I should add that we're talking about Eliminator here and not just the regular multiplayer race,
Fine.
because otherwise those behaviours that Fraser is describing would be
No,
unusual.
not
They're just behind you.
What about other players? Do they get to experience these changes that you've made as well within the cars?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything that I've talked about with granular engines, the modular system that we've developed,
Also die Umgebungsgeräusche haben sau heftig überarbeitet.
Well, and it makes races just sound
I bet
far
that
better.
sich dann
launch
Auto in der
moment
Ferne
is, and you
anhört
hear
und
all
so.
the engines kick up, and you could just like name them all.
It's so effective, honestly. Like Fraser told me about it before I heard it, and I've got to be honest, I was like, yeah, I'm sure that'd be cool. And then but then the actual experience of it it's so visceral and interesting, and you do genuinely hear like, oh, it's a V10, that's a V8. You can just hear every car going past you, or as you're going past them.
Yeah, it's really cool. And as your players drive past you, you'll hear all those upgrades that they've applied. So if your friend has applied a supercharger and you kind of want to hear that, you'll be able to hear that next to you as well. I think something to point out as well is that all of the AI cars and your friends around you, the sound of their car will be the exact same sound that your car has. So if two Lamborghinis pull up next to one another, they'll both sound the same. They're sharing the same engine, which I know is something that players had sort of mentioned in Horizon 4 before as a bit of an issue, which I'm glad to say we fixed that now.
Lovely. And now I do have to ask a rather personal question, and that is a little birdie does tell me that everything does indeed sound better on the Xbox Series consoles. Can you confirm how and why?
Yeah, that's right. It's one of those things where, as much as we talk about the Xbox Series consoles, you tend to talk about how great everything looks, the amount of detail we've been able to add, how beautiful the world is. But the consoles actually unlock quite a lot of extra audio capabilities as well.
Absolutely. So with the new Xbox Series consoles, we've actually unlocked a new compression format, which allows for much higher fidelity audio.
Die Series-Konsolen hört sich das alle besser an, Digga. Ich bin bevor ich gestern erstmal meine Series X gepatcht habe, Alter, gefixt habe, gesagt hat, die Sounds jetzt wieder alle normal gehen.
And it was a joy for me because a lot of people, I know in the clips that we've released already, I sort of mentioned the fact that it sounds a bit cleaner, sounds a bit more refined, and that's what you're hearing is actually the higher fidelity compression format, which just makes everything sound so much better. And the good thing is it's not just your car that benefits from that, it's absolutely everything in the game. So the ambience, the music, the dialogue, and the cars, everything sounds better on Xbox Series consoles. I must say as well that if you're playing on an Xbox Series console and you're playing against all your friends who all have these granular engines, thanks to the modular system, you'll actually be able to hear more cars around you as well as more of those upgrades and turbo parts. So as they're driving past you, you hear all the flutters and stuff, which is great. Just adds so much character to the game.
I love it. And talking of character, it's my favourite part of the stream, in which we go to you lot for some questions. So you've been asking questions throughout the stream. I'm
Jetzt
actually
kommen die
going to ask
Fragen.
the first one because I'm the most important person in the room. And I want to make sure that we talk about convertibles in essentially every single episode because it's been a consistent theme. So I want to know, we already know that the lids go up and down, but do they change the sound of the car too?
They do.
Hey,
Yes.
there we go. I thought as much.
It's one of those things that you maybe don't think about, but it's kind of a subtle shift. Previously, we kind of only had the concept of was it a hardtop car or was it soft top, and it was binary. It was either one or the other, which made it really hard for us to implement something like
Als ob
convertibles.
sich die Sounds ändern durch das
Because
Cabrio.
we've completely revolutionized the way that we're doing car audio for this game, we've actually been able to implement the cockpit filtering, the cockpit reverb systems a little bit different so that actually if you're in a car with the top up, it'll sound all muffled, and as it comes down, you'll actually hear all the ambience and the wildlife really creep in. If it's raining, you'll hear that as well. And then that's another cool point that, Dolby Atmos, you'll hear that above you as it's going down. A little bit of a geeky point, but I quite like
It's brilliant. Full nerd. We absolutely love it. The next question comes from Forza Horizon World, and they ask, what is your favourite car sound that you've recorded? And I give this to you both to answer.
There's so many to choose from.
I'll go first and I'll say the Stratos. I think the Stratos is just a really cool, iconic rally car that I personally...
Anstatt Fragen über das Spiel oder so zu stellen, fragen die, welches Auto das, was ihr Lieblingsauto war, das sie aufgenommen haben.
The BRZ because I just think it's such a cool, like, rumbly boxer engine. It's just got a really nice kind of low end to it, and I definitely picked my favorite engine to show on the stream. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, next question comes from Subterfuge Dog, who says, how do you keep the exhaust out of the muffling?
So that's a good question. We have to place them a certain distance away from the exhaust. Exhaust can get really hot. Like you just wouldn't be able to touch one. So we keep them a certain distance
Die spielen
away.
keine, die
and that
stellen
sort of- that
keine
sort of
Fragen oder die
stops
nehmen
the
keine
exhaust
Fragen
being muffled by, like,
über das
being
Spiel
surrounded by all these
selbst.
microphones.
Die nehmen einfach Fragen. Oh,
It's a bit of a
welches war euer Lieblingssound?
test and see what sounds
Wie
good.
habt ihr die
So you kind of place it on your
Mikrofone
drive up
heile
and down.
gehalten
If
bei
it
den
does
heißen
sound muffled, then we'll
Auspuffen?
probably just move the microphone and run it up and down again. So it's we kind of just play it by ear.
Okay. The next question comes from Jerp. Sorry if I've said that wrong. It's a really interesting question because you've actually mentioned both these methods, and they're curious to know why you've chosen to record in this way and not using the previously mentioned dyno method.
That's a great question.
No,
I like the way you say that and then turn like
I told
yes.
you prep. I was thinking about. I might ask him this one myself.
Okay, well, there you go.
So
thank you, Jerp.
aside from the fact that it's really fun to get cars out on track
It's
and race them up and down, there's a really important point, which is if you put a car on a dyno, then essentially you can basically only record the car when it's accelerating. There's no way to get that offload sound. It basically it has no load applied to the engine. So as soon as you let off the throttle, the car's not going anywhere. So it basically just lets off, and the deceleration just disappears. So previously,
Ich glaube, das war's mit dem Stream, oder? Die stellen halt nur ganz komische Fragen. Über jetzt die Sounds und so, nichts Spielspezifisches oder so. Also keine Fragen, wo wir jetzt noch irgendwie interessante Infos rauskriegen. Ich meine, dass da tonnenweise Arbeit hintersteckt und alles ist ja klar, ne? Aber die Leute, ich glaube, die wollen andere Sachen wissen.
And decelerations do sound like really different to accelerations on cars. So basically, the short answer is to get all of that lovely character and detail, the pops and bangs and all the little sweeteners that we want to record.
But also you wanted a really fun day out.
Ja,
That's
also,
the
ey,
unofficial answer,
Lots.
yeah.
Exactly.
wir haben ihn super vorhin gehört,
Next
wir
question
sind
comes from
aufgenommen.
BNK, who asked, so because the sounds have improved a lot, will the first-person car sounds be improved as well? This, I think, is a great question, by the way.
That is a great question, and probably something I forgot to touch upon. Yes, we have, as part of the car recording process, we've actually been recording cockpit impulse responses.
Jetzt hat er gefragt, ob sich im Innenraum die Sounds auch anders hören. Ja, wird's wohl, ne?
From every frequency that the human ear can hear. So it kind of goes like up through the...
Lovely.
Ja, weil ich gerade sagen wollte, wir haben ja gehört, wie der Supra da bam, 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 am Knallen war, ne? Aber was wir dann im Spiel gehört haben jetzt hier im Stream, hat sich wieder also vom Knallen her nicht so geil angehört, ne? Und ich glaube, das werden die auch nicht so heftig hinkriegen, das Knallen.
Engine into that reverb, then it makes the first-person perspective sound amazing. It also benefits all the things like the tires that you can hear skidding on the ground, just like
the
that.
one outside.
All the tires screeching on the ground, all the kick-up, all the water, all the rain, all the weather. As that plays through the cockpit, it just sounds like you're actually sitting in the vehicle that we've actually recorded.
Authenticity.
Für Xbox-LKW kämpfen, was feiert ihr da?
And I've been very keen as we've been going through development to just all of the cars we have in the game that I have driven in real life to just go and like get a feel for them and drive them.
Ich sehe nur einen hässlichen Crazy
really do sound authentically
Trying
like
to
that.
catch
LKW hier in Horizon.
I would provide the feedback if it wasn't.
Was ist da los, jo?
Lovely. The next question comes from Gab Reiser, who asks, the huge bridge that was seen in the E3 gameplay, is that part of the huge highway that you talked about in previous streams? Great catch.
Ja, endlich.
It's actually not, no. The bridge is on a separate road that runs through and above the jungle region. So yeah, not part of the highway.
Good spot though, good spot. Okay, next question comes from
Die Brücke gehört
Cragger
nicht
Longclaw,
zum
who asks,
Freeway.
will the Eliminator start covering the entire map?
Eliminator, wen interessiert der Eliminator schon? Also die Brücke, diese große, gehört nicht zum Freeway. Das ist eine separate Straße, die über den ganzen Dschungel rüber geht.
Lovely. And then the last question. Oh no, my apologies. There's another one there. So first of all, we'll do Boxfort, who asks, can we expect to see familiar Forza Horizon characters to return in Forza Horizon 5?
Yes, we can. We
Lovely.
have a bunch of returning characters. Plenty of new faces as well, but no, we have some friendly faces. Alex and Jay are back. Scott Tyler, of course, is here, as is Amy Simpson on Pulse. Even Mike Steele is back again. We won't spoil why he is here.
What I will say is anyone watching this who knows, you're going to roll your eyes that I've said this. Many people who I am close friends with have, by the way, just mentioned I should do the voice of Anna, and I think it's a stupid idea because I sound ridiculous, but I am just going to put it out there.
Can you give me do you want to audition right now?
Lol, die wird die Anna
What do you
synchronisieren.
want me to say? What's the line that you've got Anna to record?
Turn around.
Geht der wieder Testfleisch
Turn
spielen,
around
ja,
when
ja.
it's safe to do so.
That was quite bossy.
I know.
Strict.
I know, but I think it'd be really effective, right? And just think about it. Maybe we'll pick it up in another stream.
Right, cool.
The actual last question, however, comes from Hugh is Banana Gaming, and they ask, is there new engine swaps in the game?
There is. This is a great question.
They've all been great questions, haven't they?
They have been great questions.
Aw,
Well
you
done.
lot.
Well done.
Yeah, well done, comedian. It's like you knew the thing. It's like you knew the things that we forgot to
you've
say during the
behaved
actual
today.
show.
It's great.
Yes, a really important piece that I wanted to mention is that we are adding over 500 brand new
Ja, es gibt
engine swaps to the game.
Disziplinarverfahren hier, das geht so
Where it
nicht.
makes sense, you'll get potentially like a V10 Asian car on an Asian car that you're driving, which is really cool. So I know a lot of people said,
Ich muss ein
when
paar
I
Sachen
upgrade my
ändern.
car, it's kind of like a pyramid. Everything ends up sounding like the same.
Ja, neue
Well,
Engine Swaps
that
gibt's
is,
auch, ne?
hopefully no longer going
Interessant.
to be the case. There's going to be so much variety, and hopefully, I can't wait for everyone to jump in and explore and see what we have to upgrade.
I feel like your mentions are going to be bombarded with people going, look at this mix.
War auch die letzte Frage, glaube ich, ne?
Do you like it? That's going to be your whole is just like approving other people's creations.
That's fine. That's fine.
There you go. Good. So those are the questions we all have time for today. But before
Ey,
we
was
go,
ist das
I
denn?
wanna
Warum so
see if
frech?
there's
Ja,
anything
na, dann
you
muss das wirklich sein. Ich kann ja auch nichts für.
Absolutely.
So, ja. Wie gesagt, die Brücke gehört nicht zum Highway. Das ist eine separate Straße. Ja, Sounds haben wir gehört. 320 neue. Ich bin gespannt, ey. Also, na, ja. Die Viper ging auf jeden Fall fit. Supra, ja, besser auf jeden Fall als in, Horizon 4 jetzt. Bin mal gespannt, ob sie jetzt noch weiter dran arbeiten bis zum Release. Ob das noch verfeinert wird. Aber bis jetzt klingt das ja ganz gut. Adios, adios, adios. Kann man mitarbeiten, glaube ich. Ist nicht wahr, ne? Ist nicht euer Ernst. Als ob, Junge. Was für, ey. Einfach Xbox, Playstation, Nintendo Trucks, die sich hier rumprügeln. Für Panzer, Alter. Hör mal, ey. Konsolenkrieg in-game, man kennt's. Ist so bescheuert, ne? PlayStation. Okay, gut. Raus damit. Das war's. Neue Sounds. Haben die jetzt eigentlich gesagt, was sie im nächsten Stream machen? Keine Ahnung, ne? Was im nächsten Stream kommt. Zumindest haben wir auch ein bisschen was in-game jetzt gesehen. Sieht ja bis jetzt ganz fresh aus. Ein paar Autos halt sehr merkwürdig, die sie aufgenommen haben. Aber an sich finde ich dann mit den Sounds schon mal... Geht in eine gute Richtung. Was die da veranstalten. Ne? Wo ich hier gerade im R8 sitze, das ist ja einer der geilsten Sounds so, die sie hingekriegt haben. Aber... Viele andere klingen halt völlig bescheuert. Der ist auf jeden Fall sehr nah an dem R8-Sound dran. Ich bin ja hier mit dem rumgefahren. Also in echt war der Sound schon relativ nah ran. Alles klar, gut. Ciao Bella, Mamella, Caramella.